most of us spend our lives following a script. We have a script for our meeting, script for our sales calls, and now thanks to AI, we even have scripts for our authentic interactions. But often work doesn't follow the script. Sometimes predictable just doesn't work. My guest today, Kat Koppett, spent the first part of her career on her literal stage pioneering spontaneous Broadway, but she didn't just stay in theater. She flipped that narrative and took those exact same tools to places like Apple, NASA, and even the UN to teach some science-based methods of applied improv. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how Kat built the global consultancy by proving that play is a serious business tool, why authentic interaction is the only thing AI can't fake, and how to navigate the journey from as is to be when you don't have a map. Cap, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, as we kind of dive in, maybe we should start with your now, just to kind of bring people up to speed on what you're up to and what you do.
Yeah. So I have a sort of two-sided professional life right now. About 9 years ago, we bought an old 100-year-old firehouse by way of illicit strip club featured on the Jerry Springer show. And we turned it into an improvisation theater company. So we have shows every weekend and classes and events. We just did a benefit last night. It was super fun. So that's half of it. We do improv performance. And the other side of the business is an organizational development consulting and training company that uses the principles of improv and story to help leaders and teams expand their performance options and effectiveness on the job.
Amazing. Just where is the theater?
We're in upstate New York in a town called Schenectady.
Home of Union, I believe, right?
Union College.
Yeah.
And originally GE, this big
Okay.
GE sign.
Awesome. All right. So that's a good kind of baseline to kind of get into. I'm going to actually ask questions on both of those areas. We're probably going to spend more time on the consultancy.
Right.
But before we get there, where'd you grow up?
I was born in New York City.
Okay.
My father was a sports writer for all the New York papers, ending up at the New York Times. And he convinced them when I was about 8 years old that they needed a West Coast correspondent because he didn't want to move to the burbs and be away from home all the time. So we moved to Palo Alto, California,
Okay.
which is where I grew up. Yeah.
Okay. So New York to Palo Alto.
Yeah.
And then if I understand, the next kind of big stop was NYU, right?
I went back to New York City, ran back to New York City as soon as I could, graduated high school a year early, and I got a drama degree, a BFA in drama from NYU.
Okay.
And then later, we can talk about later, but then
We'll
off to
talk.
Columbia after that. Yeah.
Awesome. So I do have a question for you right here
Well,
in this moment. Supported by family or tolerated your pursuit over at NYU?
yeah. Strongly supported, I
Awesome.
thought.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
thought. I mean, they let me graduate high school a year early. They paid for everything, which is an incredible privilege. It was my father who sort of introduced me to the theater. Years later, when I decided to stop pursuing a professional life as an actor and went back to grad school to get a master's in organizational psychology, he said to me, "Yeah, I think that's better. I never really thought of you as an actor." So
Oh God.
he kept it to himself.
That's called family love. I
Yeah.
love it.
I guess it was a compliment. I think on some level he probably meant it as a
Right.
compliment, but I don't know.
All right. So now it starts to kind of, professionally speaking, you're starting to make this move, right?
Yeah.
You've been in theater for a while. You now you go to Columbia. Is that on purpose, or is that you're kind of searching for next and this seemed kind of like something interesting?
Yeah, an improvisational path, really, as I look back. What happened was I had gone to a very serious acting conservatory and I was, doing my struggling actor years. And that's not, it's a rough life, first
Yeah,
of
it
all.
is.
But also, one of the things that my acting teachers, there were two things that happened. One was my acting teachers kept saying, "You're stupid things, like you're too smart to be an actor," which is both not true. Actors are brilliant, but also not helpful. And I was part of a theater company, and they invited an improviser to come and do a workshop with us. They were very separate worlds at the time. But this improv instructor sort of had a key that sort of opened up for me what my acting teachers were trying to tell me, which was that I could get a little stuck in my head. I could be a little um, repressed is probably the best word, or I would censor myself instead of just trusting my impulses. And
Right.
they didn't they weren't able to teach me how to shift that, but my improv teacher was. So because of that, and because there were fewer gatekeepers in the world of improv, they couldn't say, they in improv they don't say, well, you don't look right for the part, or you have to get the part before you get to do it. You're part of a repertory company, really, and you can create your own roles. You're writing for yourself. So I was attracted to that. And meanwhile, my day job was teaching English as a foreign language to Soviet refugees. And so I started teaching improv class, and my students in the improv class started saying things like, "Oh, I wish my boss knew this rule of making your partner look good," or
Huh.
yes,
Right.
saying yes and, or I wish my team could collaborate the way we collaborate here in improv class. You should come to my company and teach improv to my team. And I was like, well, I'm a struggling actor and, why not? Corporations have money. But then very quickly, I wanted to make sure I wasn't selling snake oil. I was like, I
Right.
don't just want to be doing it because, you know, it's a grift. I want to really be sure that there is something valuable about improv for teamwork, or improv for creativity on the job, or improv for leadership development. So that's why I went back to Columbia to get a master's in organizational psychology and sort of test the theory.
That's pretty amazing. So here you are, you're teaching English to primarily Soviets. Are you teaching them real English, or are you doing improv in front of the classroom there?
Well, it's funny that I think the reason I mentioned that, the ways those two things sort of serendipitously connected were, one was I did find myself using improv games and activities to
Right.
help the students really with fluency,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You can get really stuck in a language if you feel like I have to get it right. But if you can learn to flow and play and make mistakes, that helped the students be more expressive and learn more quickly.
Mm.
And then it worked in the opposite direction too. As a teacher in that program, eventually I was promoted to a teacher trainer. So I was training other teachers, and then I became a supervisor in that program. And that introduced me to a consultant who came in to work with us and gave me my first sort of organizational training and development opportunities because he liked me and invited me along. So I sort of
Right.
had a sense of that training world. So when my students said to our improv company, "Come to teach us," I was sort of tagged to be the person to develop those
Right. And you were
relationships with
predisposed
that
because
job.
you that's so fortunate. Do you think
Yeah.
that was accidental, or do you think you were in search of an opportunity at that moment, and the
Well,
you could kinda connect those dots and say, "Let's go."
yeah, I mean, as I say, it was an improvisational journey, and one of the principles that I was sort of living before I even really knew I was gonna be teaching it was this idea of everything is an offer, right? On an improv stage, my partner says, "Hi, honey, I'm home." I have to receive and accept those, we call them offers, right? Everything that my partner says and does is all I have to build with. So in life, in applied improv, what that looks like is, this was this opportunity. My student made this offer in the scene of life that I was in, come to our company.
Mm.
And so I luckily didn't say, that sounds stupid, because it was a little wacky at the time.
No,
Now
no,
a lot of people do it, but it sounded, but instead I was like, "Yes, I'll come, and I'm gonna learn about whether this is really valuable or not."
quick, side question, just because you were teaching language,
Yeah.
improv is a language, or improv is something else?
Improv is a set of improv is an activity of responding and building the moment with whatever exists without pre-planning or having the chance to go back and edit and revise. So to answer your question, improv is a set of practices, sort of a philosophy, or an approach
Right.
to the world. I have a colleague, Kelly Leonard, who says improv is loud mindfulness. So
Okay.
I don't know. uh,
I like that.
I don't know what we call mindfulness, a sort of philosophy of life, a practice. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is neat. This is a neat origin story. So you're sitting here, you have a quasi, is this an opportunity in front of you, or is this, do you think at this moment, like a eureka moment of this thing? You're right. There's a fair amount of improv, business school kind of, it's a little more mainstream than
Yeah.
when, say, you were there. Did you think you were at the beginning of something? Did you think you were about to forge a new path, or what's
Yeah.
happening in your head at that point?
I did actually. There was one guy named Robert Lowe who had written a book called Improvisation Inc. And I wrote him an email and I said, my students are asking about this. I think you're the only person doing it. Help me. And he did. He was very nice. He wrote back. Years later, we became friends. So that gave me a little encouragement, but mostly it was just a very weird, the term applied improv didn't exist yet.
Right.
I found out within about 6 weeks of starting my master's program, which I really loved for lots of reasons and learned a lot from. But it didn't take very long to realize, oh, yes, of course, this is valuable. Most people are starving for these things that we in the theater and in improv take for granted, which is that we're going to see and hear each other and be able to be invited to express ourselves and to connect, right? Like people were starving for that. So I was like, okay, this is valuable. In the 90s, there was very little work, early 90s, on creativity, wasn't really a business field. I had one module of one survey course. So I was like, there's something here. And I wasn't alone. It was starting to pop up. And there was a guy in San Francisco where my family still was in the Bay Area who was starting an organization called Creative Advantage. And he offered me a job out of school. So I went there instead of going to you know, Deloitte or PwC. And
Right.
we were really at the forefront, along with a couple of people in the UK, and um, at, at starting a field. And with a lot of hubris, I wrote a book very early on called Training to Imagine, which just came out in its third edition now, 25 years later,
Amazing.
um, that said, yeah, here are the principles of improvisation. Here's a whole bunch of activities for you to exercise your muscles around things like listening and storytelling and building trust and spontaneity, idea generation, presence, right? Those are all things that now, 25, 30 years later, are, almost cliche to talk about needing as sort of
Right.
business and leadership skills. But at the time, there was something new happening. So yeah, I think we felt like we were on building something new.
That's awesome. And you could see that, right? You could see it. You felt like you were building something new. Um, any regret in that moment of leaving the world of theater, or it was bye bye? I'm just going forward.
I I didn't have regret in the moment, and what I didn't really know was that I wasn't really leaving it. I think
Right.
that on a personal level, I think what I realized was w what I cared about, the reason I was drawn to theater was really because I was drawn to the interpersonal connection of it. I loved building something in community. I loved, feeling connected. I loved having my, um, authentic, vulnerable self be nourished and valued. And but I didn't need to be famous. I didn't need to be a celebrity.
Right.
Uh, and I was finding that in the training that I was doing, in the building business that I was doing, in the teaching, right? I was finding that same kind of community. Also, as it turned out, I never actually really left. When I went off to San Francisco, I joined an improv company there, a sort of sister company to the one I was working with in New York. And then, as I say, now I own a theater company and I'm performing all the time. So it's
Right.
improv rather than scripted theater, but it's still, I get my fix. And then speaking too, you do a keynote speech, you get to be on a big stage in front of an audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I think that all tracks. That makes sense, especially the okay, so let's actually just fast forward a little bit on
Yeah.
MOPCO, the actual theater. Um, it's I was gonna ask a different question earlier, kind of, but I think you've kind of maybe pushed me in a different direction. Feel like coming home or feel like a massive success to just have this achievement in terms of the theater kind of creative side to birth something like this? What's going on there?
Well, I will say, for your business listeners, it is not a great business plan to
Right.
buy an old firehouse and open an improv theater. Our financial advisor, we were doing a lot of work for big organizations, as you say, like Apple and Facebook. And so we had the capital to buy a building and open an improv theater. Our financial advisor was like, well, you can do that. You can have an improv theater or you could have a retirement. Maybe not both. So, a good 10 years in now, I'm like, okay, well, all right, in for a penny. We'll see what retirement looks like if that ever comes along.
Right.
So that's in some ways the sort of cynical answer. It's been wonderful, and it's creatively, it's wonderful. I also think, we were shut down for a year and a half during COVID. We did
Yep.
some stuff online, and now we're back and really full force. And it took a while to be able to fill seats again. But what I find is that more than ever, people are really, really looking for community, for a place where they can connect and play in person. And I used to think, oh, we have this little hobby, the improv thing on the side, but the organizational development work is the real work. And obviously that still, has impact in, I think, some ways that are significant, but
Yeah.
also being part of our local community and giving people a place where they can come and feel valued and um, supported and seen and appreciated, and where they can just play is really, it feels like something that the world really needs right now.
We're coming back to that.
Yeah.
We're coming back to that. Um, and I do tend to agree. I think
Yeah.
there's some concepts to play with, but
Yeah.
let's stay on the consulting side for a little bit here.
Yeah.
I am real curious about this. So I'm not, I'm not questioning whether it's valid or not. I want to be really clear when I say that. But I am curious about how you got there
Yeah.
and some of how you developed the science, because I think that's really interesting for folks to kind of hear, to understand it. You have this, well, on one side, you have this super hyper creative concept. And on the other side, you need to kind of validate it. You need to walk into these enterprises. They obviously have this human need. Um, how'd you develop the science around this? What was happening there? Because I'm sure there was a lot of maybe drag or disbelief or
Yeah.
incredulous kind of attitude. I don't know. So I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
real
it was a
curious.
little bit of a hard sell, sure,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning. Um, well, to be clear, I did not develop the science. I studied
Yep.
research that other people were doing and made connections. There is now, again, 25, 30 years later, people who are actually doing research on the impact of improvisation in these ways. So
Yeah.
so people have done studies, because what is improv, right? It's actually a lot of different things, but there are folks who've done some studies that it tends to reduce anxiety, that it increases senses of belonging, that it can. The simple way that to say it is improvisation, which is just a series of activities and games and approaches and mindsets, is like the gym for exercising a lot of skills and muscles that people have discovered are useful, right? So, for example, um, everyone knows listening is a really, really important skill for a salesperson to have, or for a leader or manager to have, to really be able to build connection, have people feel motivated and supported. You need to be able to listen well, right? For influence, you need to be able to listen well. Um, so that it's one thing to say that, but how do you actually build the skill of listening?
Right.
Improvisers are super power listeners, and they have all of these exercises that they've developed to build that skill. So that's just one example. Um, and so really what I was doing, and what those of us who sort of started the field were doing, was making those links, and those links just continue to be found. Um, for example, uh, all the work on psychological safety that's been done over the last decade. Amy
Hmm.
Edmondson's work, first and foremost. She talks about how she did a lot of research at Google, and she discovered that it was teams that really felt safe with each other, who were willing to take bigger risks, who could problem solve more effectively, partly because they were willing to uh, admit mistakes and investigate them as opposed to hiding them because they
Right.
felt too much shame or fear, right? Uh, and so now everybody knows psychological safety is important. But how do you actually build trust? How do you actually exercise your courage to take a risk, to fail, and rather than shutting down and crinkling up into a ball, just sort of go, "Woohoo! I failed," and accept it as a gift and move forward, right? So there's lots and lots of research around creativity, for example, that how do we generate ideas by separating idea generation from idea evaluation, which really means letting the sensor get out of the way so that I can access my impulses and feelings, right? That's another muscle that improvisers exercise.
That makes sense. And in the world 20 plus years, um, your students, your enterprise students, as they come in, always the same, or are they more receptive, more excited, or are they kind of like, holy moly, what? I guess we're doing this.
It depends on the group in some ways, but in general, the ideas that we're talking about have almost become cliche in some
Right.
circles, right? If you're working in Silicon Valley, um, IDEO is a big creativity center, came out of the engineering school at Stanford uh, because David Kelly and his partners were saying, we get the smartest people in the world. And they think that what being smart is shooting holes in other people's ideas. We have to teach them that accepting ideas and building with those ideas, right, is actually just as much a creative act or an act of being smart or brilliant as saying no. That's improv, right? How do we accept and build with an idea as opposed to blocking or shutting it down? So a lot of this is embedded in Silicon Valley or entrepreneurial culture. We just don't call it improv.
Right.
And the other thing I'll say is that, I was very skeptical. I grew up in a very, very hyper intellectual New York City Jewish household, which is like incredible high value on quote rational thought and science and research, which is why I went back to school to study it. Um, but I had to kind of be brought along first by my improv students, then by a client. I remember I was doing some work early on uh, for Kaiser Permanente in
Okay.
California, and the physician uh, they interviewed me to do a program with them on physician-patient communication skills. They're actually training physicians to be peer coaches to help doc docs be better at talking to their patients and connecting to them. And I gave them my whole pitch at a grad school about, lots of studies and all these theories, and this is why improv is valuable. It's sort of what you're asking me for now.
Yeah.
And one of them said, "Okay, that's great, but what about this idea that we're just improvising all the time? That just as human beings, it's not a metaphor, it's what we're always doing, so we can get better at it by practicing it."
Right.
I was like, "Right, right, that too." So, in some ways it's just obvious. I mean, you said it, we're performing all the time. Often we have scripts or habitual ways of doing it. What improv practice can help us do is expand our awareness of our
Yeah.
habits and scripts, and then expand our range of options.
I think it's interesting also because our tolerance for risk overall seems to have waned, and
Mm,
we seem to be right now in a very prescribed kind of, this is what normal looks like. I can see normal. Um, I can see normal perhaps even on steroids because all I have to do is look at my phone and I know
mhm,
exactly, I'm told over and over and over again, not only life normal, business normal. Um, and there does seem to be some resistance towards making mistakes and discovering things as you go. That kind of journey you just described, I think, is a little further away from what business in 2020 looks like versus, I don't know. Seems like well, maybe I'm just in the moment, but it does seem like there's some need for flexibility and fluidity and understanding the human components of,
mm.
we don't all fit the same little box.
It's a really fascinating moment that we're living in right now, David, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, um, I think that you're right, that there's a certain amount of anxiety about taking risk and flexibility. Things I think people are afraid in a lot of ways. Um, Ironically, things are also much less certain,
Yeah.
maybe than they've ever been. Certainly in my lifetime, right? So uh, we need to be able to be resilient and flexible and adaptive, and not just stay in our habitual ways of being, because the world is changing at an incredibly fast rate across all sorts of different axes. And if we're not able to respond and adapt, we're not going to succeed. And a mechanical engineer once said to me, uh, the strongest part of any system is the most flexible, right? If you don't, it's the flexibility which will keep the machine strong, right?
Right.
If it's
Give.
rigid, it'll break. And so I think we need these skills and mindsets more than ever. And some of our clients really recognize that. But also, as I say, I think it can feel like riskier to take risks in this moment that we're in than when we feel
Right.
very confident and we're flourishing. I'll give you one quote. Keith Johnstone, who's a huge thought leader in the world of performance improvisation, said, "There are people who prefer to say yes and people who prefer to say no. People who say no are rewarded by the safety they attain, and people who say yes are rewarded by the adventures they have." So it's not that saying yes, which is sort of the yes and spirit, um, it is always the right choice. Sometimes safety is good. Sometimes we want to protect ourselves.
Right.
But if we're going to move forward and grow and respond and adapt, then we have to sort of be in this yes mindset.
Yeah, and I think that gets back to some of that IDEO concept of, how orgs develop and what they need to think about, and forward thinking orgs in particular of really, I think the safe bet is for most people, especially in very, we'll call it, caustic environments, caustic moments in time, such as right now, is to say no. You
Yeah,
you can
it'll protect
survive.
you.
Right. It's not necessarily the right answer for the organization though, which is a little bit counterintuitive of, be more disruptive is actually better for us as a company. Even if you don't like it in the moment. So we're going to teach you how to do it with a level of comfort and care and quality, maybe.
Well, because if it depends what you want, right? If you
Right.
want people to be creative and adaptive and responsive and resilient and problem solve, then you need to reward that. And if you punish it or you make
Right.
it unsafe, it won't happen. And I think you're right. I think organizations pull back, right? Like they say, oh, right, that's great, but really we just care about the bottom line, which really means we care about the next quarter. And that isn't, that's not ultimately adaptive, keeping
Right.
ourselves safe in any given moment or feeling safe because it's all a lie anyway, right? None of us are safe. Everything, right? Is,
I gotta
and
go.
just
I'm
feeling
done
like
now.
pretending that you're going to have control doesn't actually, isn't always going to help.
Just one quick comment on that mechanical engineer story. Often that concept of flexibility is I've heard it referred to as give.
There you go.
Just
Give.
yeah.
Uh, Now I will quote you when I tell that
Well,
story.
I don't know if any engineers need to be hearing a quote from me, but that's a separate story. All right, I want to one thing I know when we were talking, and it's totally related to what we're talking about right now is right now.
Mm,
Part of our pre-show, you had kind of thrown out this concept of me of can we spend a little time talking in the world of AI
mm,
and interaction and improv? Um, I had shared with you pre-show that wasn't really something I would have come up with on my own. I was super excited when I saw your note on it. So let's talk about it. What does this mean here in this world? I'll let you
yeah.
go first.
The cute way we've been saying it is um, that we're interested in helping people develop the OG AI, which is authentic interaction. Right? Like there's lots and lots of things that AI already does. And I think when we talk about AI, often we're talking about these new large language models, right? There's many, many things it can do. I do not underestimate it. Years ago, I went to an applied improvisation conference and I had AI create a sonnet
Yep.
about improvisation. And people were like, "Yay, it's on it." And I was like, "It was written by AI." And they were like, "That wouldn't shock anybody right now." But at the time, the conversation was like, "Oh, it can't be creative."
Right.
But it can, right? Like it may not be Shakespeare, it may be derivative Shakespeare, but it can do as good a job of being derivative of Shakespeare as I can. Um, so, so the question is like, so I don't underestimate it, and I'm not a naysayer, and I use it in various ways. But there is something that is core to our human experience and that only humans can do. And I think that's be human, right? Like the only thing I cannot do through AI is connect with you as a person and have
Right.
you see and understand and feel connected to me. So when we do a lot of speaker coaching with leaders, for example, right? And we say, like, you can write a fancy article and send it out, but AI can also sort of do that. It's you standing in your body with your voice, expressing yourself, which is in real space with people, which is the thing that is most special about you being a human being and the thing that you can most develop. And maybe eventually we'll be in our Wally pods and we won't need actual, you know, interpersonal connection. But I think for now, if we're talking about psychological safety and trust and connection and relationship building, it, we outsource that at our peril
Right.
because ultimately we're robbing ourselves of the whole point of it all.
The best part.
I mean, that's why are we doing anything, including making profit, right? Theoretically, it's so that we can have more fulfilling lives. And so we can't really outsource our humanity we maybe, and maybe we can, but maybe I'll say it this way: we outsource that at our peril. We're actually losing something deep, and I guess the other thing I'll say about that is, m- we hear a lot about upcoming generations who are afraid to make eye contact, right,
Right.
or have an in person conversation. Uh, I know that my daughter's in her first year of a doctoral program now, and I see her success, and it's because she goes to office hours and talks to her professors in person because she feels comfortable standing up in front of a room of peers and presenting or having conversations with them, or going out for coffee. Right, her ability to do those things as a 22-year-old set her apart, um, and I don't think it's just generational. I think there are plenty of people my age who've sort of those muscles have atrophied as we
Yeah.
stayed in our house for 3 years and then, so
I'm even seeing it in the office where I'll see people walking around with headphones.
yeah.
The weirdest thing for me to see. It just says, I'm here, but I'm not interested in you talking to me. I'm here because I got to be here. Fine. Strange.
Well, I think it connects to what you were saying a few minutes ago. I think that people are afraid, and there's good reason to be afraid, right? If
Right.
I say something wrong, it's gonna be recorded and promoted and live on the internet forever. It's not like I can go like, "Oops, sorry, I misspoke," right? Like, people have people are afraid, or they feel dispensable, or just they're not in practice interacting with people and it feels uncomfortable. So I think those are we can work out those muscles, you know
Yeah. Do you find in your practice that you're having some of these discussions as you're going to open up new projects where the teams are kind of expressing some, I guess, curiosity or concern or some human kind of element of not quite anti AI. I don't want to say that.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, but just some concerns around how technically derivative we're I guess becoming, and we're at a discernible human loss.
Yeah. I think that, like with any technology, we have to figure out what are the ways in which it is additive, right? How is it actually helping us? And it does in all sorts of ways. And where is it, uh, where is it taking away? And if if I don't know how to sit down and read a book, and I just go, give me the summary of a book,
Right.
or if I'm like, okay, here's what I think my thesis is. Here's a headline. Write me a blog post, and I haven't actually done that thinking, then that is reducing my capacity as opposed to expanding my capacity. And the same is true with a conversation, right? If I can't have a difficult conversation with you because I don't know how to listen in the moment and understand where you're coming from and empathize and express myself, right? Then those human capacities will atrophy. So I think people do feel it. They feel it in themselves and they feel it in their relationships with their coworkers. And, I say in person, we right now are connecting and having a good conversation. I think there are ways in which, virtual technology gives lots of people access, and we do a lot of virtual programs. We can connect in virtual space, but
Right.
there is still something about an in person, live, back and forth that, um, people come to us hungry to develop an experience.
I like that conversation capacity and that curve, and I think that's a neat perspective. So thank you for sharing that. Coming back to MOPCO now, I told you
Mm,
we'd come back to this in the
yeah,
context of this conversation. I tend to agree with you that there is there seems to be the pendulum coming back towards a thirst for a human connectivity. I think some of that's post COVID, some of that's post social. We're starting to
yeah.
have some reckonings there, some of which are slowly getting legislated. Um, but even on a, you mentioned you have a 22-year-old. I got some kids, 19 and 16. I think about these things a lot of kind of what does
Yeah.
it mean, authenticity. Are you seeing that kind of energy like come back to your live shows at like kind of pre-COVID levels, or is it look different today, or what's happening there?
Yeah. We are It took a while, as I say, after COVID for people to want to come back to in-person spaces for entertainment,
Yeah.
both because they didn't wanna be in in-person spaces, but also, like, they had giant televisions that they'd bought and all the entertainment in the world, right? Like, are
Right.
competing against Netflix and Apple, and our shows are funny, but they're not, you know, Severance quality compelling, like,
Right.
um, maybe they are, I don't know.
They are.
Uh and so what came back first actually were our classes. We started a drop-in class for people to not be passively entertained, but just come play, right? To get to experience being in space together. The book Bowling Alone, like that had been happening for a long time. That we people weren't going out and playing together, right? Just having activities together, and that just post COVID, that was a huge hit. People were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, a place for me to go and meet other people and engage with other people and be in
Huh.
space." And we became a sort of third community through that mostly. And then
Wait, just real
for
quick, just a
so
quick question
yeah,
on that.
yeah.
Did you guys was that like a business decision that you thought that was good, or is that something you felt you needed to do?
We were already doing it, right? We were
Yeah.
meeting with each other as a company and rehearsing every week and doing our shows. So it was, and we had classes. I think it was mostly a business decision, right? How do we let people have a taste of this without having to commit too much, right? Just come try it out.
Right.
Um, and I will say that we tried it a little bit. It had been part of the business strategy forever. It was noteworthy, I think, post COVID, how that was the thing which caught fire. And we have people who never come take our series classes, who never want to be performing improvisers, but who love that and come every Monday night. And it becomes their community,
Yeah.
It's, yeah,
Huh. That's neat.
yeah.
Ah, this has been awesome. Thank you. This has been really fun. All right. I want to kind of get us towards the end.
Right.
And one of the features here on the Flip Story that we have is the Flip Story recipe book. We invite our guests to kind of share some ingredients, some formulas, some methods, some real kind of actionable takeaways that maybe others can benefit from, whether they want to flip their own story or they need to flip a moment or
Mm.
what have you. So, Kat, I'd like to invite you to share in our book here.
My recipe. Well, I think the improviser's recipe for successfully navigating the scenes of life come down to three sort of simple things. One is to trust yourself, right? To turn down the volume of the sensor in your head and blurt, like be willing to take a risk, to just say whatever is obvious or boring or stupid or weird, right? So to trust your own impulses. The second is to really pay attention and receive as many offers as you can. Sometimes that's called listening. Sometimes it's called noticing, right? Like really just pay attention to what is true in this moment, right? And then the third is to accept those offers and build with them, even if they're not what you were expecting or what you like. It doesn't mean you have to agree, like that's it's a good idea, but like, oh, we're in lockdown right now. How do I accept and build with that? Oh, uh, you know, gas prices are high. How do I accept and build? Uh, so letting go of judgment, noticing more, and then accepting and building with whatever exists because we don't really know what's coming next anyway. So we might as well just take it step by step.
I love it. I love it. All of it. It's been a ton of fun to have you on the show, Kat. I really just can't say thank you enough. Last question for you.
Mm.
How do people find you?
My website for the organizational development is just my name, Koppett, Koppett, and you can find out all about the things we're doing all over the world there. And if you happen to be in upstate New York, come by the MOPCO, that's MOPCO.org. Don't go to MOPCO.com unless you want cleaning supplies, per se. Or you can find us on socials at MOPCO Improv and Koppett.
Love it. I'll put all those links in the show notes. So with that, I just really want to say thank you again for coming on to the show and sharing with us and being super generous around your story and the work you're doing. It's really neat. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It was a delight.
All right, folks. So we'll catch you on the next one. Bye now.